Well, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome this evening. Welcome, one and all. Welcome this evening. Welcome this Saturday evening, 25th of the 10th, 2025. I just want to thank everyone for coming on. I want to thank you for coming on to the show. And the show, of course, will be inspiring, motivational, and empowering. On the Corner Flex, Marcus Garvey's legacy. Evolve or remaining constant. I repeat, Marcus Garvey's legacy, evolving or remaining constant. That's my show this evening. And as you know, going through Black History Month, one of the things that I said that I'll be talking about a lot, it's about Black history. Do we immortalize? Do we just have monuments of the greats? Or we focus on the teachings? I've had Minister Malik some time before, well, Minister Stephen Golden some time before. I know I'm going to be having tonight the Honorable President General Mwariama de Kamau, who is the President General of UNIA Negro, Universal Negro Improvement Association. And the question I'm going to put to him is Marcus Garvey's legacy. You know, the whole thing about Marcus Garvey's legacy, and that is very important. And I think that is something very important in these years. Marcus Garvey's legacy evolving or remaining constant. I want to thank those who are joining me on Facebook, those who are joining me on YouTube, those who are joining me on TikTok, and those who are joining me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And just to let you know as well, the show will be uploaded on podcasts after, where one can listen to it. If you don't want to actually sit and watch, you don't want to see my face, you don't want to see Mr. Martin's face. You know, thanks everybody for coming on. Belinda, welcome. Good night. UNIA London, Negro World Media, welcome. Eagles View, Escobar, welcome. Focus on the teaching, which is great, important. You know, but at the same time, before we go any further, I just want to sort of put a sort of issue out there presently in regards to Jamaica. As you know, there's a Hurricane Melissa, which is impacting Jamaica, and we've got to keep Jamaica in our prayers at this time, because apparently what they're saying, it is coming full speed ahead to Jamaica. So we've got to keep Jamaica in our prayers at this time, and as well as much as possible, just to have that, think about even the after effects as to how, and just pray that everything goes well in regards to this impending hurricane. And I was just listening a while ago to a press release, and I think I have a clip of it here. Just want to bring that up. The press release in regards to what is happening in Jamaica. Here it is.
A major hurricane. What is projected right now is that it will be a Category 4 hurricane that makes impact on the island. It will likely decrease as it moves toward the north coast, but a Category 4 hurricane is more than we have experienced before moving across the island. Gilbert was a Category 3 hurricane when it moved over Jamaica. It became Category 4 when it was heading to the Cayman Islands. Ivan was a Category 4 hurricane, yes, but the center did not pass over the island. Beryl was also a Category 4 hurricane, but it also did not impact us with a landfall. It was a direct hit because we've got the heavy rainfall and the associated weather, but it did not move over the island in terms of the center of the system. We have not had this experience before, so it's important for us to consider this as an extraordinary situation.
Yes. So what they're talking about is regarding this hurricane. And they say, breaking news, Melissa has now strengthened to be a hurricane Category 1 status with maximum sustained winds of 75 miles per hour. She continues to move slowly towards west-northwest at 1 mile per hour and remains on track to make landfall in Jamaica on Tuesday. So what I'm saying, get ready. I'm not too sure. If somebody can remind me, the categories, is it one more impactful or 5? Is it reached a category 5 or category 3 or category 4? What are the different areas? I must say. Because I remember the last time I went through a hurricane, it was Hurricane Gilbert. I think I was staying with my sister in Corville Gardens there. And I think all I was concerned about during Gilbert, believe it or not, was my component set. It was an Iowa component set, believe it or not. Oh, selfish I was. But nevertheless, all I was concerned about as a young gentleman was just my component set. And I wrapped it in paper, in plastic, just to make sure it did not have the impact there during that time, you know. So we just look that everybody, and I see the government is as much as possible releasing funds to the different ministers in order to help the different areas. And now is the time for Jamaica to come together and to really hold fort, hold fire, and to brace and ready. But I must say though, prayers tend to always impact these things. So it's coming very hard, but somehow the prayers can change and make things happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, before further ado, I'm just going to get the show started and talk about my guests, and then we get rolling and we wait for brother Kamau to come on. So, without further ado, let's start the show. Oh, right. I was dancing to the tune. I love that tune there. That opening there for the show. I think it's very beautiful. Evolved over the years. Dancing, ladies and gentlemen. Please like and please share. And thank you for joining tonight. Marcus Garvey and his legacy is a very powerful thing, I must say. You know, UNIA under Marcus Garvey inspired one of the most globally significant Black movements, rooted in self-reliance, unity, economic independence, and African redemption. With Marcus Garvey now posthumously pardoned January 25, and UNIA still active across the African diaspora, these questions bridge historical reflection and modern reverence tonight. And I must say, I was speaking to a gentleman, I think it was today, and I sent him the invite, and he said, I didn't know that UNIA, Minister Malik, this is what he said, I didn't know that UNIA still is around, and persons didn't know that UNIA still exists after all these years. Said, wow. So therefore, that is something very important, and therefore, I believe personally that I have a role to play as much as possible in getting the message out about Marcus Garvey. One of the things that I've been doing since the show with Minister Malik and Stephen Golden, what I started to do was to, when I walk in the park, I start to make quotes, not make quotes. I recite Marcus Garvey quotes. I believe that is so important. And, one God, one aim, one destiny. And I realized by just simply going Chat GPT, Perplexity, AI, digital world, and just say, give me some of Marcus Garvey quotes, and there it is. So therefore, I tend to encourage persons that while you're on the social media networks or whatever like that, grab some of these quotes, quote them, say it out there. I know we like to dance and have fun and chat pure foolishness on, but I think it's very important that we capitalize and utilize some of these quotes, and I think it is very important. So the Honorable Mwariama D. Kamau, who is the President General, correct? The President General, born and raised in Washington, D.C., was introduced to the UNIA ACL in 1997. By 2000, he became the second Vice President of Division number 330 and co-founded the Marcus Garvey and Amy Garvey Work Study Group. He has served as a delegate to numerous international conventions and held various leadership roles, including international organizer and president of the Washington Division. In August 2024, Kamau was elected President General of the Universal Negro Movement, Negro Improvement Association, and I repeat, President General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. He also co-founded the Henrietta Vinton Davis Foundation and the Universal Marcus Garvey Day Tribute, contributed as an associate producer for Mosiah, a film about Marcus Garvey, and educates globally through journal articles and social media. He resides in Akoke, MD, and is a proud father of 4 and a grandfather of 6. And I must say that even today, when I was having a chat with him, he actually became my default producer, because he actually guided me and said, Silburn, you're on mute. And I said, yes, thank you so much. So he's now my actual producer as well. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome President General. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm perfect, if not better. Still on the case for our race. Thank you for inviting me.
Still on the case for a race. I like that one. Still on the case for a race. Fantastic, fantastic. You know, how was your day so far? What is it like? You're in Washington, aren't you?
Oh yeah, yes, sir. Everything is wonderful. Weather's great. You know, we're still doing what we have to do. Mr. Garvey's alive and well in Washington D.C. So I'm happy.
Can I just say to you that, as I said, a question which was posed to me today by someone, just by casually, I saw him and I sent him the link, and he said, "Oh, I didn't know UNIA still exists." And I said, "Yeah, it still exists so after all those years." Marcus Garvey. So elaborate on that point. I know we're gonna make it gets it into the mindset of everyone that it is still here.
Yes, well, certainly. The same reaction I received back in the 90s when I had studied the philosophy and opinions and wondered whatever happened to the Garvey movement. And unfortunately, I didn't see any evidence of it for some time until a couple years later when I heard on the radio someone announced that the local division of the UNIA was active. And that's when, it was no further thought needed for me. I wanted to be a part of it. So, unfortunately, for many, many reasons, the Garvey movement, that Mr. Garvey, I would say a little over 100 years ago, had peaked around 12 million members, has been dismantled, decentralized, attacked, internal, squabbles and all sorts of things have lessened the size and the visibility of the movement. And others have come out and tried to build better mousetraps, et cetera, and reinvent the wheel, and have tried to have programs similar, but not actually join the movement. And so, we weren't as visible when I first joined, but now I would say that we are starting to gain once again in visibility. The work that we have been doing toward promoting Ms. Garvey's philosophy and program is starting to take root and starting to show signs of a new life. It's kind of like the dandelion. The more you try to dissipate and blow it away and get rid of it, you're actually spreading it. And it's eventually going to take root and form more dandelions until the whole world is consumed by the dandelion. So we're hoping in the same case with Mr. Garvey. There's Mr. Garvey once said that when all else fails to organize the people, conditions will. And so as the conditions once again begin to look like they did in his day, we are hoping the people will begin to realize and appreciate the value of his philosophy and legacy and how it transformed and impacted our lives for the better in his day. And it's also an equally viable program today. So, the lack of visibility is a problem, but it's not going to be long. It's they used to say in New Orleans during the Hurricane Katrina that when the waters rose, the fish were seen eating ants. But when the water subsided, the ants were eating the fish. So every dog will have his day. We'll have opportunity soon to resurge and become once again the most relevant, most prestigious, the most impactful movement for improvement to ever walk the planet Earth. So I'm confident.
And as Garvey would say, one God, one aim, one destiny. Those are the things that revolve around the whole thing. I just seen the topic which I put out there, and it wasn't something which was shared before with you beforehand, and wasn't even shared with Brother Malik. But is Marcus Garvey's legacy evolving or remains constant? And that was a sort of general topic which I have there. But before I ask the first question, to a certain extent, when that is posed, that topic, what do you conjure up? What does that that conjure up to your mindset is?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that our philosophy, our aims, promoting the spirit of pride and love, establishing a universal confraternity amongst the race, building educational institutions, and blah blah blah. All the aims that we have, that remains constant. The philosophy that Mr. Garvey, we consider him the progenitor of the golden age of universal African nationalism. He's the perfecter of the faith. So a lot of what he taught, we maintain because, he was the best to ever do it. And so as the master architect and chief engineer, the most comprehensive blueprint for Black power ever designed and constructed, we're going to maintain the philosophy, but we will use different techniques in this day and time to spread the message and promote things. We're going to use modernize, technology to help as podcasts, etc., emails and cell phones and things that Mr. Garvey didn't have access to try to spread the message again. So it's a program that's evolving. As our needs evolve, we're going to have to address them different ways. But by and large, the movement and its ideals remain constant. But the program itself, you can see the legacy of, in fact, this last year, we'll say within the last 2 years, the world was shocked to find that after 100 years, Mr. Garvey received a presidential pardon. The first ever narrative short film of Marcus Garvey came out within the last 2 years. A number of books, as we mentioned, I think the other day, children's books. Brother Stephen Golden, our first assistant president, as I'm sorry, wrong camera director.
That's all right.
Marcus. One of my favorite also is Teach Me About Marcus Garvey by James Wilson, children's books. Jeffrey Philp has a book, My Name is Marcus. A lot of these are going to hopefully soon be introduced into the Jamaican school system and then school systems where Black people are around the world. But aside from those, there's so many other just children's books that came out over the last few years on the Garvey movement. So the movement's legacy is starting to grow. People are starting to adopt it. In fact, the African Union hopefully will be installing a bust of Marcus Garvey that Dr. Julius Garvey and some of us had produced in the Hall of Heroes, so that Africans abroad can, in the 6th region of the African Union, will be able to present the greatest amongst us, who what I say is the greatest name my lips can frame, the most honorable Marcus Garvey, right there in the bust. So there's a evolving consciousness and evolving understanding and appreciation for Mr. Garvey. So I would say the legacy is not stagnant; it is evolving. Hopefully, we'll utilize again that movement to help actually materialize some of the objectives that in this day and age, which I say is there's a book once written called Garveyism in the Age of Globalism. And neo-colonialism, and we need Garveyism in the age of globalism, but we also need the programs, the institutions, for the masses to embrace the philosophy once again. Dr. Mwariama Ani once described Mr. Garvey's philosophy as the resurrection of the ancestral African sovereignty imperative, and that's something that we need to once again to see ourselves as the people who can control our own destiny, produce everything that we consume, not look like we're poor and starving in Africa. We're not poor in Africa. We got all the wealth of the world. The world is dying to get into Africa. So it's not that we're poor. We're just poorly organized. We're not outnumbered. We're out organized. Mr. Garvey used to say that our greatest enemy is disorganization, not one another, not the other man, but our disorganization. So that's really all we need in this day and time to kind of reverse the curse and flip the script on the whole world power equation. If we just embrace the ideals of Mr. Garvey once again.
It is very interesting what you said, poorly organized. And years ago, and I put it to you as you're in that position there, how? I mean, we all say we know, but how did Marcus Garvey at that time, at that era, without internet, without social media, was able to disseminate such information around the world? What was the key ingredient?
I'm going to show you a secret.
Yeah.
And
should I broadcast that secret, or we need to keep it between ourselves? Right? Everybody knows.
No. It's just between me and you, whoever might be listening today.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the formula that Mr. Garvey used. It's kind of an ugly symbol there, but can you see that symbol?
Yeah, is that a
It
crown?
looks like a W on top of a line.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what Mr. Garvey used. That curvy wave on top of the line. And you know
Yes.
what that's called? That's called putting your behind on the line. When
Okay.
Mr. Garvey organized, he did everything it took to accomplish everything that he did. He was willing to do whatever it took. If he had to work day and night, if he had to sacrifice every dollar he had, if he had to, speak to some of his rivals and enemies in such a way that he could win them over. He
Yeah.
did what he had to do. He traveled the world on his own expense. He stayed places where, were not the most comfortable places in order to save money, in order to continue to spread the word. He did all kinds of odd and end jobs, but he was doing everything he had to do to accomplish everything that he did, because he saw his mission when he had his epiphany in the UK, in London, come after reading Booker T. Washington's Up from Slavery and seeing the possibility of building this movement for improvement on a universal level. He had an epiphany. He some elders think he spiritually traveled in some sense and saw Africa future past and was guided by the ancestors to go out there and save the world, save Black people all over the globe from the tyranny, from the oppression, from everything they were suffering. And so he couldn't stop. He couldn't waver. He couldn't take a break, because they were always reminding him of what his obligation was. So he was able to do these things, and it wasn't him alone. I must point out that his ideas were so huge that he erected a universal umbrella by which great organizers were attracted to him. So some of the greatest writers were in the Negro World newspaper, the Thomas Fortunes, the William Henry Ferrises, the John Edward Bruces of the world. He is inspired by some of the preeminent leaders like Joseph Robert Love, the Reverend from in Jamaica. Great thinkers were connected with him, like Deuce Muhammad Ali and other people who flocked to his universal idea of improvement, not just a local program, not even a national, international program, but a universal movement for improvement, universal in scale as well as international scope. So his ideas, are what attracted the right people to embrace him and the program. And eventually, as we know, Mr. Garvey was able to establish just in Harlem alone so many businesses that he employed over 1,000 people, that he had international conventions with 25,000 delegates from across the world would come and pack Madison Square Garden to capacity. This is an actual racial plebiscite held in New York back in 1920. He introduced the red, black, and green flag. He had a team of ships. He had actually a department for air. People always talk about what would we do today different? Would we get airline? We actually even had the Black Eagle Flying Corps back then, where we were training pilots to take over into the aeronautic department of the UNIA. But we had so much going on. We had the factories, we had the shipping line, of course, we had the Universal, the hotels, I should say, the publishing companies, millinery shops, textile, publishing, you name it. There were so many institutions, just in America, 5,000 people throughout the country were employed by the UNIA. And this is in a 2-3 year time period, and millions of people joined the organization. So the right message at the right time to people who at that time had not heard such, these were people who were not too far up from slavery when his message started to resonate. And in fact, just if I may quickly, my great-great-grandfather, who was born in 1838 in Guinea, he was kidnapped and brought here to America in 1850 when it was supposed to have been outlawed. He lived up till 1923. And up till 1923, he wanted to go back home to Guinea. He had children throughout the 1880s, all the way up into the 1910s. He was still producing children, but he wanted to go back, not to some romantic idea of Africa, but he wanted to go back to his very homeland. So the ideas were still fresh in a lot of people's mind about us being African people and wanting to return to a place where we were free. And so, Mr. Garvey's ideas resonated a lot stronger possibly at that time than some people today who feel so far removed generationally that they don't want to recognize themselves as African people. But again, conditions will demand that we understand the wisdom of unification as a race globally.
Thank
So
you.
anyway.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to remind for those who are listening on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, I've got President General Honorable Mwariama Kamau, who is the President General of the UNIA, which is alive and kicking, which is the Universal uh, Negro Improvement. Am I getting it right? I always try
Oh
to
yeah,
get it. Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
Universal Negro Improvement Association here tonight. And we're just following up on leading to this is the end of Black History Month, well, the last Saturday. So I said, let me just develop this as much as possible. I want to ask this question again is how has the UNIA adopted Garvey's message of Africa for the Africans to
yeah,
address 21st century realities such as migration, globalization, and technology? Um,
yeah.
yeah, we're seeing people from the African continent coming to the West, but at the same time, there's a movement also back to Africa as well. The balancing of the whole thing. What's your perspective on that, sir?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. There are a lot of forces that are taking place. Many are aware of the Ibrahim Traore and other African nations beginning to break away from the colonial masters and become more independent, which is in keeping with Mr. Garvey's idea of sparking an industrial revolution in Africa and bringing science par excellence to Africa, versus many in Africa who are kind of, creating a brain drain. I think it was Dr. Arakana once mentioned that there were more Nigerian doctors in California than in all of Nigeria, because so many people were leaving the continent and trying to utilize their skill sets where they can make more money and, et cetera. But Africa really needs a scientific, technological, industrial revolution. And so, many Garveyites, like Brother Stephen Golden, have been working with the United Nations Permanent Forum for People of African Descent, working, in fact, recently we had one of the UNIA holidays, August 31st, declared the international holiday for the race. There are some of us who are Garveyites who are working with the nationalists, the African nationalists in Africa on different projects like Ibrahim Traore and others. Some of us are working through the African Union, 6th region, to try to promote a permanent end to neocolonialism, because North Africa is still heavily ran by a non-Black African population, and so we are people who promote racial solidarity and also racial independence. And so, even though others may have been born, the second, third generations of invaders of Africa may come in and try to regulate our continent. Mr. Garvey always felt that African people have a natural right to possess our motherland. And so, whereas other people may come and invade and want to take over it, you can see China sending hundreds of thousands of people over and trying to take over land and marry some African women and move in and because China's not producing enough resources or food to feed their country. And
Yeah.
so a lot of folks are coming. You see Russia now coming in. Other folks are starting to invade and kind of pillage the resources of Africa, and because we're not really producing our raw material into finished goods, and again, changing the equation. But the UNIA has been supporting and promoting and lobbying and trying to teach the same way Mr. Garvey, who unfortunately never had the opportunity that we know of to physically visit Africa, but his program reached Africa. The philosophy reached it and was heard by Jomo Kenyatta. It was heard by Nnamdi Azikiwe and others, like Nkrumah, who joined the UNIA and later, started, promoting Africa for the Africans and spitting out ideals such as those. So, according to the UNIA, is our divine injunction for us to redeem or rescue Africa. Mr. Garvey considered, just as Europe was regulated by Europeans and Asia is regulated by Asians, Africa should be regulated by African people. And so we all should have our own vine and fig tree. That's our vine and fig tree. And even though we kind of forfeited it to others to come and invade and do what they did, it's also our obligation now to reverse that curse. And so, yeah, it's still our mission. Mr. Garvey called the redemption of Africa a great
Yeah.
commission, not only to recover Africa for Africans, but to rescue the souls of Africa's sons and daughters from social, political, economic, and spiritual bondage. So that's still our obligation today.
You know, one of the things that I've used this, and I've said a few times, and this is one of the books which I tend to read, and it is the selected writings and speeches of Marcus Garvey, and it's really powerful. And one of the areas which always talks about is there's no time for bowing and no time for scraping and pussyfooting. It is time to let the other fellow knows that you're alive. And then when I was looking at the Marcus Garvey and the whole impetus when it comes on to economic bit, Garvey's emphasis on economic empowerment through ventures like the Black Star Line set a template for Black enterprise. You know, how does UNI today pursue economic nation building within the diaspora? And I use it on the basis whereby it says here, let the other fellow knows that you are alive. Alive means to say, you're not just there, you're alive and you're kicking and you're well. You're not bowing, you're not scraping, you're not pushing around, you're creating enterprise. So just asking that we're as the UNIA empowering that thinking today.
Yeah, we still promote the same ideals. There are different divisions and different persons within the UNIA who have successfully or are successfully, practicing entrepreneurship. And we've been working with other divisions, normally correspond with one another, and doing different types of commerce and trade. One brother's getting a product from the continent like sea moss or something, and he's selling in his division. He'll send some here and someone to send some there, and we'll begin to, spread it across until we can develop that into actual thriving, companies, things like that. But we're doing small scale things, not on the level of the Black Star Line as of yet, but we are aspiring to get back to that level of industry and trade and commerce that Mr. Garvey perfected again in his day. And it's a lot of projects we're working on, Africa towns and buying land and doing different things, because that's important to developing that international market between us and Africans abroad in different countries and regions. But yeah, the ideals, Mr. Garvey, one of my favorite quotes by him is as he's related to people of African descent in America. He said the Negro is a cultural tramp in a political gutter of the world until he evolves his own industrial state, until he evolves his own state supported by industry. He's going to remain, let me get that quote right, exactly. Built upon a solid industrial foundation. He'll be standing upon his own feet rather than walking around dressed up in a borrowed civilization. So when you look at the cultural, industrial, and political aspects of that saying of his, we have to develop industry. We have to be in political control of our destiny and not have to submit to any other sovereign power in order to have that level of control over our destiny. So to have that kind of growth, you need the economics, you need the politics, you also need the education, which is why we are working on publications like Brother Stephen was doing with the Daddy Marcus, and us from the earliest stages introducing a sort of African fundamentalism with the youth, so that the youth embrace a pride and respect and appreciation for our heritage and our tradition, rather than following the European Greek philosophy, the Aesop's fables. I told Brother Stephen the other day, Mother Goose's cooked once he put that book out there. And there's a lot of other things that's going to start to change as we start addressing that on a youthful level, teaching them about business and industry, and kind of getting them used to understanding how to develop businesses of their own. But right now, not enough of us are doing what we should be. And so, like Mr. Garvey, he considered himself an inspirational agitator. I'm not going to be one to flatter us as a race and as a people that we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing on the level we're supposed to be doing it right now. That kind of flattery will, doom us.
I might be controversial if I said at the time when Marcus Garvey was around, there was less integration.
Yes.
And therefore there was a squeeze on the black nation at that time. And
Yeah.
based on that squeeze, just like diamonds and all those sort of things, you got to press to get
Right.
out that juice or that the shyness of the diamond.
Mhm.
Do you think in a way today we have become, nothing is wrong with integration per se, but psychologically we are being too integrated in a certain sense,
Yeah,
whereby the
yeah,
pressure is not there for us to be united. We're now part of everything.
yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the greatest obstacles
Mm.
we've had was, and originally we didn't even really want that kind of integration. It was, the whole school segregation idea where black people were paying the same amount of taxes as white people, but they were getting less money for programs. That's what forced that kind of integration that would allow us, to get what we deserve. But yeah, as we begin to have the luxury, quote unquote, of being able to patronize other communities' goods where they didn't in exchange patronize from us, we begin to become more and more uh, or less wealthy, I should say, and less uh, producers and more consumers.
Mm.
We entered the era of consumer slavery where we have been too comfortable just supporting everybody's business in the world. I know if I opened a business in certain neighborhoods, I wouldn't get a certain like in where I live in our Maryland D.C. area. If I opened up in an area that was mostly Asian populated, then one of them would come in and patronize my business or support me. Same thing if I opened up in an area that's mostly white, they wouldn't come out and support me. But if they open their McDonald's or their Chinese food restaurant up, there'd be a line around the corner of black folks patronizing their businesses because we try to be, we're race blind and we don't see all this kind of silly post-racial silliness. But they see race very clearly and they will treat you accordingly. And so if you don't have some understanding of how to circumvent discrimination by producing things of your own, we're going to be stuck, in the position of being impoverished, of being destitute, of being dependent upon others to do things for us that we should be doing for ourselves. So yeah, it's sad that integration kind of led to a nationalistic disintegration of our ideals and our objectives. So we're fighting that still today. A lot of people don't understand the importance of loyalty to their community in order to prevent others from being a determinant of whether they get certain treatment from hospitals or certain treatments from banks. We had our own credit unions and our own clinics and our own hospitals and
Yeah.
banks. We wouldn't have to be getting redlined and wonder why we stuck in this cycle of poverty that we create ourselves. So
And one of the things when you without touching on any of the communities, but we are seeing communities who are very united, very, even though they're in societies, but they are really n- um, together, united, and ensure that they've got that economic clout, they're building their political clout at the same time, and there's a purpose and there's a vision. Somebody just said a while ago on TikTok, it's possible for our identities to become more blurred as we become more integrated.
mm. Yeah,
You know?
yeah, that certainly is. There's a movement afoot in the States right now that has narrowed our thinking into pretending that we are strictly a nationality. This subculture of America is our identity, and that we don't want to relate with people of our race throughout the world. And so somehow, I think it was initially is designed to, because some people were afraid that reparations check wasn't going to be large enough if they had to share with people who can't trace their ancestry back to enslavement. People who may have
Yeah.
come in the 20s, etc. So they started this whole movement, foundational Black America, and all this silliness that it is, it's silly to see people who rather separate from one another, the
Yeah.
same race. We all getting treated the same way by the same people. As Malcolm X used to say, if they pull us over in the car, they're not going to ask us if we're Muslim. They're not going to ask us if we're from Nigeria versus Cameroon, or anyway, the police going to say N-word, get out the car, I'm going to bust you upside your head. And so they see us as one and they treat us like one, but we don't see ourselves as one, which is the key to us having the power to be able to regulate our own affairs. As long as we're divided through tribalism, through this nationality or fake nationality, divided because of complexion or class or some of all these other different things, our race is always going to be conquered. The same way they came in Africa, and
Yes.
the difference between the Ashantis and the Fulanis and the Wolof and the Hausa and the Igbo and the Yoruba, all these, they attack one at night. We should have known they were going to attack the other in the morning, but because of
Yeah.
our divisiveness, that's their problem. I'm not worried about them until it happens to us. I'm not worried. But had we been concerned as one whole race of what they were doing when the
Yeah.
Europeans came over as a race and we attacked them tribe by tribe, but we had no chance. But if we had understood race first, then they would have never gotten hold in anywhere in Africa, and we would have avoided a whole lot of catastrophe that happened to us. So anyway, race first is still
Yeah.
the most powerful philosophy we have.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to thank you for coming on. Those on TikTok, thank you so much for joining. Those on Instagram, ladies and gentlemen, I have the Honorable Mwariama Kamau, President General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Yes, Marcus Garvey writings, Marcus Garvey's legacy still exists today. And as is Black History Month, and even beyond Black history, ladies and gentlemen, I will always be talking about this. And so therefore this is a empowerment time as much as possible, that we should be empowered as a people, while at the same time we are integrating. We should ensure that we are united. There's a thing in the book here, sir, it was a southern woman who joined the UNIA said, Garvey is giving my people backbones where they had wishbones.
Yes, sir.
That's
Yeah.
powerful, isn't it? That's just
Oh,
dropping
yeah.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people had pride. In fact, Professor Kelly Miller, who was a Howard University professor, had spoke with a man who had mentioned that he was an African chief, and
Yeah.
he had mentioned that every time that one of the Europeans in South Africa had mistreated somebody in the community, he had put a mark on his staff and tell the people, wait till Marcus Garvey get here. I'm going to show him what happened. And there were
Yeah.
people lighting bonfires on the shores for the Black Star Line because they were hoping and expecting that he would come, with his Universal African Legion and help start training our brothers and sisters back home to come liberate the continent, which was kind of part of the plan. But yeah, Mr. Garvey had so much pride and dignity that others began, like the quote that many people assign to him: this black skin is not a badge of shame, but a glorious symbol of national greatness. And don't take the kinks out of your head, take the kinks out of your mind.
I literally just looked at that quote a while ago.
Yeah.
Sorry, I want you to deal with that bit there a bit. Do not remove the kinks from your hair, remove them from your brain. Just elaborate on that bit there.
Yeah. Many of us are concerned that we don't, in this day and age as well, there's too much an effort to try to denature ourselves, to try to fit a certain image that we think is going to make us more successful. Sometimes we think it's going to make us prettier if we adopt, a blonde wig, or we put on, some hair straighteners so we can, look more westernized, or etc. And that we focus too much on trying to appease another people than trying to, correct our thinking, to have pride in our natural endowments and things that make us beautiful, who we are by our own natural African standards. So
Yeah.
Mr. Garvey was raising the African nobility of pride and dignity in ourselves. He had in the book, The Message to the People, The Course of African Philosophy. This is a powerful book if anyone can get their hands on it. This is the one edited by Dr. Tony Martin and etc. But he has a whole chapter in there that talks about that physical makeup of ours and how African people should be proud of their natural image, as well as the Europeans should be proud of their image, and the Asian community should be proud of theirs. So, but if we compare ourselves to their standard, then we're always going to look at ourselves as being insufficient. Of we had to be more. We got to straighten our nose up more. We got to do things to modify ourselves to fit their image.
Yes.
And that image is dangerous even in religious sense. Mr. Garvey used to talk about the black God concept, and that we, we're made in his image, so we should be proud of our image. And the same way that we were made in his image, he therefore in some way must favor us and look like us. So when you look at how the church has used the image of the angels, and angel food cake is white, and devil's food cake is black, and everything that's pure and holy is white, and everything that's dark, murky, and demonish is black. They're actually teaching us to deify their whiteness and demonize our own blackness at the same time without us really paying attention. So when Mr. Garvey said that God was black, people went crazy and thought that he was, how dare you, the God is invisible. And he told them, you know what? You're absolutely right. He is invisible. Then they said, hold up, why are you saying that he's black if you said he's invisible? He said, well, it's only natural for humans to see the divine through human attributes. So, when the writers of the Bible talk about the whole world in his hand, or that, you're irritated by touching the very eye of God, or, you draw close to his bosom, these are human attributes, so if you're going to see the divine through these human attributes, let those attributes look like you, look like your, imagery, and stop, borrowing other people's imagery to, to deify. So, pride in who we are and what we look like, fundamental to any, pride in your identity and heritage. So, those simple words did a lot to change the dynamic at that time.
This is very powerful. This is very powerful. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to ask you, put any questions in the chat room in TikTok and in the chat room if you want to address anything directly to President General at the same time. Please feel free to level of engagement before we finish. They're saying that some argue, President General, that Garvey's ideas have been absorbed into mainstream Black consciousness through Pan-Africanism, Rastafarianism, and Black Lives Matter. Do you see this as evolution or dilution of his legacy? Because initially you said one has got to sort of amalgamate or to improvise into today. But do you see this as evolution or dilution?
Oh, it's definitely a dilution. There's no replacing perfection. I mean, you can try to reinvent the wheel, but you can't make it any more round than it already is. So if you make it 361 degrees or 359 degrees, it's not perfect. So Mr. Garvey, again, in being a perfecter of African nationalism, he's the one who demonstrated miraculous achievements through his practice of the philosophy. Everybody today who's come with this civil rights versus the human rights agenda is just, they try to invoke, the red, black, and green flag, or appropriate certain elements or quotes from Mr. Garvey. Sometimes, they have named their groupings or use uniforms similar to the Black Cross or the African Legion, etc. They utilize implements that Mr. Garvey used, but it's still not the same philosophy. You can't bastardize the philosophy and expect to get the same results. So if you want the same results that Mr. Garvey was able to achieve, like he did, you got to follow the same program. It's a time-honored, timeless wisdom, tried, tested, and true formula for success. And the more and we apply it, the better our results will become. But when we try to change it up, and we think Mr. Garvey was okay, but he should have did this, or we think this program was okay, but we should have did that, and you trying to split it apart, you'll never get the results that he did. So I think the more we begin to reflect on how he was able to do what he did and what he was able to do by having a strong set of ideals and unwavering commitment to materialize these things at great sacrifice to himself, I must admit. As I mentioned earlier about that, behind on the line, Mr. Garvey got stoned when he first came to Detroit. When he was in, I think it was Chicago, he went to a church and sat in the front row, which was reserved for light-skinned people who were mixed with, white blood. And so the preacher, the pastor himself, saw Mr. Garvey sitting on the front row, pulled his sleeves back, and was ready to get into a fist fight with him just for sitting in the front row. But this is the kind of, stuff. He got shot in New York. He got imprisoned in New York. He got, sent to Atlanta. He got imprisoned in Jamaica. I mean, he was exiled from the country. He was treated horribly everywhere he went. Rivals bad-mouthed him. The boys went around telling everybody Mr. Garvey's trying to kill all white people. telling everybody that the ships were made of wood and you're going to die trying to get on it. Don't send your goods. I mean, these were black people who were rivaling him, so that he can say that, the movement was largely decentralized and dismantled, not because of the enemies that he saw so much, but by the friends he trusted. Those who were around him were trying to sabotage, sending agents who, trying to befriend him, etc. It's a lot of pain and sacrifice that he made for us to move forward as a race of people. And thank God he did, because of Marcus Garvey, we've seen the birth of the Harlem Renaissance. Because of Marcus Garvey, we've seen the birth of the African independence movement, even the Black Power movement. Adam Clayton Powell was one who sat at the feet of Marcus Garvey. The Reverend Congressman Adam Clayton Powell is a young man, because Abyssinia Church that his father pastored before he did was right next door to the Liberty Hall. So he's one who also mentioned that the roots of Black Power, Marcus Garvey is the root of Black Power. Same thing with Malcolm talking about the Nation of Islam, that the very seeds that the Nation of Islam is rooted in came from Marcus Garvey. That, all these things, the Rastafari movement, these were inspired by Marcus Garvey, the African Orthodox Church, and several other nationalist, movements. So some of them are, a little different, have their different lane, but I say that the best program that, ever existed, as far as I'm concerned, and have certainly the best results we've ever seen, was the Garvey movement. And so, as for me and my household, we're going to stick to the gospel of Garveyism.
Yeah, I want to say to you, we're just about the hour, and have you got more time? You can hang with us.
Oh yeah.
Secondly, I want to invite you if you want to get some water or something like that.
Oh no, I'm fine.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. Okay, I just want to play this a bit. Play this a bit here.
Can we do it? We can do it. We shall do it. We pray to God for vision and for leadership. And He has given us a universal vision. A vision that will not limit our possibilities to America. A vision that will not limit our possibilities to the West Indies, but a vision that said it must be a free and redeemed Africa. Christ the crucified, Christ the despised. We appeal to you for help, for succor, for leadership.
No, those at one point I was thinking that was Marcus Garvey, that
Yeah.
But it's as Brother Malik was sharing with me, and Mr. Stephen Golden was saying, it is the voice of a gentleman who emulated and it embodies the essence of Garvey. Can you elaborate on the voice there?
Yeah, that was a friend of Brother Stephen and ours, brother named Ron Bob Simple.
Yes.
He was one of the he I wouldn't even call him an impersonator, but a reenactor of some of Mr. Garvey's speeches, and some of those were letters that he actually, recited. But he was so good in his ability to capture the spirit of Mr. Garvey that even Marcus Garvey's son, who some of us call Marcus Garvey III, even he, shed some tears and said it reminded him of his father. So we always invited Ron Bob Simple out to every program. He was willing to come and attend. And today, actually, there's a new gentleman on the scene who's the UNIA cultural ambassador, who Brother Stephen and I both had the pleasure of going on the road at different times with after the film Mosiah came out. The lead actor and writer of the film Mosiah was a gentleman by the name of Samuel Lee Fudge. Yes. And Samuel Fudge is our current cultural ambassador to the UN, for the UNIA. And so oftentimes when we have events, we invite him out to share the message and gospel of Marcus Garvey. And he's really moved a lot of people in the same way that Ron Bob did. So be on the lookout for some future projects going on.
Yes.
With Ambassador Fudge.
One question that someone asked there, you Blaze, is Garvey teachings in the school in Africa? I'm going to touch on Jamaica in a moment, but in Africa,
yeah. Well, there are some schools that are embracing it slowly, particularly in South Africa and Nigeria. Right now, there's a Marcus Garvey Drillers Foundation, and I forgot the name of the city, but it's in southern part of Nigeria. But there's schools. I'm thinking of one in Ghana. My brother's name I forget, but he's actually a descendant of some strong Garveyites from out of New York. My brother's name forgets me, but he has an online school where he teaches African languages, etc., out of Ghana. But there are some individuals that I know of, even in Ethiopia. I mean, even going back to the first school that I know of in Ethiopia, the one that Mignon Ford had started back in the 1930s. This was the former UNIA musical director, Rabbi Arnold Josiah Ford's wife, Mignon Ford. When Sasha Mani became open, for Africans abroad in Ethiopia, they repatriated there, and she opened up one of the first schools, if not the very first school in Ethiopia. But they certainly were teaching elements of Garveyism there. But there's definitely been some schools abroad that have been teaching. I don't know on what scale. I would say it has resonated, and it hasn't been really measured and tested, but there are certainly some places and some divisions of the UNIA in Africa that are doing Saturday schools, that are doing book studies, that are having dialogues. It's probably about at least 15 different countries that I know of in Africa. So it's there, but it's not on a scale that Mr. Garvey had envisioned, that it would really take a foothold and throughout the whole continent and flourish. But there are elements of it. Certainly, many of the African nations, the founding leaders, were proponents of Garvey and Garveyism.
Yeah.
Sam Nujoma was, strong Garveyite in Namibia. Kenneth Kaunda, Hastings Bonda. Certainly, many of the ANC original members were virtually UNIA divisions. They even had ANC Liberty Hall in South Africa. But it's so much. In fact, the red, black, and green flag in Kenya came out of the Kenyan African Nationalist Union, which was headed by Jomo Kenyatta at the time in 1950, when they adopted the red, black, and green flag, out of which came the latest design that they have today of the red, black, and green with other images. But a lot of Garveyism inspired Africa's independence movement in places that we have no idea. So it's still there today.
There was a guy, I forget the name of the song, and somebody can actually drop it in there. It's one of our Jamaican icons. They say, rally around the flag, rally around the
red, black, gold, and green.
Yeah, that was a powerful song there, Do you glean your eyes over Jamaica, the birthplace of Marcus Garvey? And I tell you why. Jamaica just came out of an election, and one of the things that we have seen, and many people are talking about a lot, is how divided the nation is divided along political lines. It's like black people fighting black people in a way. And you're seeing sometimes people are saying them and them this. And when you look at it, sometimes you say, this doesn't really unite a nation to build strategically and powerfully. And what do you say about? I mean, and just to interject that point there, to link this, Garvey's model of a government within a government was revolutionary, and he was criticized for that in a way. But I just want to touch on how black nations, in a way, somehow find themselves in a situation based on the political, I'm not going to say masters, the political servants try to divide them instead of saying, okay, guys, let's come together.
Yeah, it's unfortunate but true. There's a lot of people who are not accustomed to power tend to behave a certain kind of way when they get a semblance of power, even much less real power. And I remember Dr. John Henry Clark, who himself also was a self-declared Garveyite and studied under many of the original UNIA members. He once said that education has but one noble purpose, and that noble purpose is to teach a student to become a responsible handler of power. And I think as we look at, introducing Garveyism in the school system, of teaching a certain set of ideals and Mr. Garvey talked a lot about politics. Of course, he had the Universal Negro Political Union. The fact that he organized the Declaration of Rights was a strong political statement, some equated to the Magna Carta. Certainly had the People's Political Party, the first political party in Jamaica. And so he had ideas on how to govern an ideal state, how to make certain administrators responsible for certain things. And so I think if we root ourselves, as Jamaica begins to embrace their first national hero more and more, and mandating that the school system begin to teach Garvey and his philosophy and history and certain things in the school, I think it will begin to unite the people around a set of ideals. The same way in America, we have the preamble with the we the people and all that kind of stuff that's supposed to try to keep us with this perfect union or perfecting our union. Of course, we're not living up to it in this Donald Trump era, so we don't have a lot of room to talk. But at least we have an ideal that most Americans embrace as what a perfect union or what a governing body should look like. So I'm thinking if we all begin to reflect on Mr. Garvey's ideas on how to set up this beautiful society where we love and respect and cherish one another as a universal confraternity, I think the politics will begin to soften a little bit, and so that if there's difference, it'll be minor difference rather than worlds apart. And we denying you everything we can, and we're attacking you, and we're doing this and that, and that's not constructive for anybody. So we definitely need to find ways of coming together and not being so hostile and angry and insulting and all these sorts of things, because our bigger problem is not the internal politics, it's what folks outside of us trying to exploit us are trying to do. And so if we have a house divided, we're not going to stand up against that outside pressure.
Yeah, I was just about to say that while we are fighting ourselves, others are just coming in and just taking over. I'm trying to say. And somebody to us just said something a while ago. Black people will not know ourselves until our backs against the wall. Now, we spoke on that earlier when we mentioned about how did Marcus Garvey did at that time. The pressure was against, and there was no choice but to unite. And what the person said, black person will not know ourselves until our backs against the wall. Is that what we need?
Yeah, unfortunately, that has, when we are at that precipice, when we're at that, last stage where we have to do this or die, that is when we tend to be at our best and to realize, what we need to. I don't know if we need to be at the, at the end of our line, but, and I like that song, by the way, the quote came from, black people never know themselves and them back against the wall. Some will rise, some will fall, etc. But yeah, it's true that we normally have to go through a lot of pain in order to see what will end it. We tend to be like the frog in the pot of water, where they say if you put a frog in some water and you slowly turn up the heat, he'll stay there until he fries to death. But if you boil the water first and then put him in there, he'll jump right out because he understands his conditions. But I think too often we become too complacent with our oppression, that we've been used to it for so long that we kind of accept it a little too easily. But when someone can point it out and someone can demonstrate the difference, that's where things begin to change. So when you have a community that runs its own, the local gas station we all go to, we own it. That's our children working there. The local restaurant, the local laundromat, the local everything in your community is not ran by other folks, but ran by yourselves, and your wealth collectively begin to rise. Then those in nearby communities will say, why can't we do that? If they can do it, then we can do it. So then they want to start putting their money together and buying, industries and their, or businesses in their community. But I think the model of success has to be firmly established, and then they will begin to be replicated throughout the globe. So that's one thing that again Garvey has a charge to begin doing again on a massive scale, is to begin to gain control over our own communities, and contrast the Dr. Elijah Muhammad would say, put the clean glass of water next against the dirty glass, and you don't have to make much of an argument that you don't want to drink that stuff swirling around in there, that you want to drink this clean glass. So we need to put that clean glass in the community. I think that would do a lot to draw people back to our eventuality, that we have to do certain things. There's not a choice, that we must, come together, or else we're going to perish. So.
And in the words of the clip which was just played a while ago, can we do it? Yes, we can do it. Can we do it? Yes, we can do it. So does UNIA still view itself as an independent global government for people of African descent?
Well, we are still an association that promotes self-reliance and sovereignty amongst African people, wherever, however we can make that happen. In Mr. Garvey's day, when Africa was colonized, except for at one point Liberia and Ethiopia, vast majority of the continent was colonized, and there was no nationalistic aspiration to decentralize people of Africa to come together and fight for independence around. So Mr. Garvey had established a provisional government for Africa's, nationalistic aspirations. So by putting this government of African people abroad together to come and establish a settlement in Liberia like he had planned, and from there we could form communities and independent communities of our own that can begin to lend support to other communities that would hopefully begin to develop nation states. Because the vision of the UNIA was to establish a super state in Africa strong enough to lend support to people of African descent globally. So yeah, the mission is still to do that. We are still nationalistic. We're still aspiring for certain things, but the whole provisional government concept is not something that we're promoting so much today as we did back in the 1920s. In fact, Mr. Garvey, as in 1924, had clarified that we are not a government, that we can operate on a governmental level, just like you can have a student government in school or some other kind of governmental structure. But we're not pretending to be anybody's sovereign government that's going to come and do anything. We don't have the land base, etc. So that the ideal is still there of self-governance, but not trying to be an imposing force in anybody's already independent land. Even though we got further to go to build on their independence. Some nations only have flag independence. So, but
thanks for that. You know that when I was speaking to yourself and Brother Malik, we heard children in the background. You spoke about grandchildren and children. I've got children as well. In what ways you and I engage in younger generations in this? Because we're in this digital age, as you know. We're in the TikTok. We're in the Instagram bit and all those sort of things. It's a frontier, How does to ensure that Garvey's philosophy speaks to their realities and activism? Because one of the things I keep speaking about is not just the monumenting of Marcus Garvey, the idealistic thing, but how does it actually translate to today in the mindset of children, mindset of people? So how is you and I engage in the younger generation, and how can persons listening enact such possibilities?
Yeah, I think there's certainly need. Like, I mean, we like, again, going back to the Daddy Marcus book, President Stephen Golden produced. Those are the types of books that we're not only encouraging but beginning to write as a group of people, Garveyites. We're trying to implement in certain schools. Like there's a few Marcus Garvey schools named after Marcus Garvey in the U.S. And so we figured if the school is named in his honor, then we should make sure the school honors their honoree honorably by teaching some elements of Garveyism at a juvenile level. Brother Stephen Golden, being the chair of Garvey department in Jamaica, he was one of the earliest amongst the UNIA people who were instrumental in teaching Garveyism. In fact, he had ABCs of Garveyism that he was teaching, I think, at Michael College. But A, Africa for the African, those at home, those abroad. B, a man's bread and butter is only assured when he works for it. C, confidence. Without confidence, we're twice defeated in the race of life. But these types of things, if the young people remember it, and in fact, someone who's about 20 years old had told him, "Hey, man, I remember you. You're the one who taught me the ABCs. I still remember them." So that kind of education on that level, as well as people like Captain F.E.M. White, who's working on implementing Garveyism in the schools in Jamaica. Again, some of us in the Garvey Institute and the Garvey Society in America and the UNIA, where there are Garvey schools, we're sending them material, posters, we're sending them nursery rhymes, with the children, saying ode to the flag, et cetera, et cetera. But there are ways of implementing on a young level the familiarity with Mr. Garvey's philosophy, doing projects so they can learn to do things for themselves. It took me many, many years to learn how to do basic fundamentals on fixing cars and doors and doing certain things, boating, all kinds of stuff that are fundamental to us as a race, understanding different industries and being able to, help and support one another. Some little things that are fundamental to our development, we try to implement with Saturday school sometimes, with rites of passages, with community programs, survival training, all this kind of stuff that we do. So there's different ways on different levels, but my dream will be to kind of have the kind of do for us what, say, the Catholic Church does with the CCD Sunday school, how they teach certain fundamentals along with the regular ABCs and mathematics, etc. And then also have the high schools, the junior highs, the universities, where you can get a complete education throughout your life, rooted in a certain mindset and philosophy, and from there you'll begin to develop the institutions and the industries that our race needs, and understand your purpose for doing it. So that's our objective. We still are trying. We still doing different things, but I think there's enough materials that's starting to become available to the race that we can begin to really implement understanding of our racial destiny once again, through the gospel of Garvey'ism. So we're working on more, but some efforts are being made. Yes.
I want to thank you so much for coming on, and it's very inspirational and empowering. I use the word empowering in this level of discussion in regard to Marcus Garvey teaching. And finally, if Marcus Garvey was alive today, what do you think you would identify as the next great frontier for the liberation and unity of African people worldwide?
Yeah, I would say that his greatest mission, I guess, at this stage of our epic, of our journey, would be to focus on Africa's scientific and industrial revolution. I think Africa, there are more and more people who are becoming awake, may not be as organized as they ought to be, but the same way, I guess, in Europe, Russia, UK, you may have a Royal Academy of Science and Mathematics and all these sorts of things, and the greatest minds come together and try to solve problems that are affecting Europe and the world. The same way we need to have that centralized center for African greatness, for the scientists, for the industries to produce. I remember years ago, a brother had put together a 100-year plan for Africa's development. And people were asking him, how can we as individuals benefit from this plan or work with the plan? And he said he went throughout 45 countries throughout Africa. And out of all 45 countries in Africa, he couldn't find, and this was about 15 years ago, so I don't know how much has changed, but he couldn't find one company in Africa that made door hinges, so you can open, and close the door. He said everybody had to go to Europe and other places just to get a door hinge. So he said, you want to make some money? You want to be wealthy? Start making door hinges in Africa for 800 million people. So when you begin to see that little things we can do can make a big change. Having, like I was telling someone recently, just the idea of having a strong railroad go across the Sahara Desert from like Egypt all the way to Mali, Niger, solar powered, because you got all the sun in the world. You can have a tunnel with, solar panels and the windmills and everything else, naturally powered. It can promote trade and commerce, having all kinds of satellites. It's all kinds of technology that we're behind in, and because we're behind, we fall at the mercy of Japan, and we fall at the mercy of others who are embracing that technology on that level. So there are some that are starting to, but I don't know if it's done in a collective, cooperative fashion as it ought to be, or is it competing groups trying to take over this and that. So I think Mr. Garvey's focus would be on us developing that super state once again in Africa, even if it is the African Union coming together collectively to do more as a group than they have been. It's kind of been a paper institution thus far. So I think that would be the biggest focus. But probably one of Garvey's biggest challenges, if he were alive today, was probably me calling him every 5 minutes and coming to his house trying to get some wisdom. He said, will you keep this guy out of here? He keeps bothering me. but
Well, Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining today, and I want to thank so much, brother President General, for joining today in regards to Marcus Garvey's legacy evolving or remain constant. And any last word you have to say? Anything that you want to share before we go, Honorable
Yeah,
President?
well, I'll just say that, again, thanks for allowing me to share a few words with your audience. I love African people, people of African ascent. I normally say rather than descent. And I think that if we begin to love ourselves, we'll begin to reflect a change in attitude that will begin to change our thinking and our behaving. And collectively as a race, we'll begin to feel our collective strength. And Mr. Garvey once said that if we must have justice in this world, then we have to be strong. And if we have to be strong, then we must come together. And if we must come together, it can only be done through a system of organization. And I just say to everyone listening, that organization is the UNIA, the best that ever did it, and it's going to be once again the best to ever do it. We can learn from the past, but we can't live in the past. We gotta can't count yesterday's points on the day's scoreboard. We got to do the work today. Since Garveyism is an action word, I'm asking everybody to start doing the work. Start studying the man and the master plan, and let's honor the workman by continuing to work. Let's do what we need to do.
And I play this before we go.
Syria did it. France under Napoleon did it. Germany under Prince von Bismarck did it. England under America under George Washington did it. Africa with 400 million black people can do it. If you cannot do it, if you are not prepared to do it, then you will die. You race of cowards, you race of imbeciles, you race of good for nothing. If you cannot do what other men have done, what other nations have done, what other races have done, then you have better die.
Powerful words as the best way to close it.
God bless our president.
Yeah, as someone said a while ago, they thought it was Marcus Garvey all the while. I said, well, it's the words, which is very important, isn't it?
That's right. Yes,
words very important. I want to thank you so much, Honorable Mwariama de Kamau, President General of Universal Negro Improvement Association, for joining us. And of course, you're always invited here, especially with the books that you're talking about, books that you're writing and so like that. We can share it. And as I said to Brother Malik and to Stephen Golden, it makes no sense I have these shows and don't actually follow it through. So one of the things that I'm doing, I do a lot of walking in the park, and it's very easy. It's so very easy, Minister, to just simply say, take out these quotes. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. The black skin is not a badge of shame, but rather a glorious symbol of national greatness. Do not remove the kinks from your hair, remove them from your brain. The greatest weapon used against Negro is disorganization. And you know how very simple it is? Type into Chat GPT, Marcus Garvey saying, whoosh.
Yeah.
It's there, you know what I'm trying to say? So in the digital world, we have it to our disposal, but we got to have the intention and the mindset to allow that information to transcend down to our new generation. So we don't want our children to grow up and say, who's Marcus Garvey? What's that? They should be living it, Minister.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree 100% with everything you said.
Yes. So without further ado, have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your day in the States. And
yes,
I want to thank also Minister Malik and Brother Stephen Golding and everyone for allowing this. We have the back-to-back discussions regarding Marcus Garvey saying and Black History Month as well, but beyond that as well.
That's right. Yes, sir. Happy Black History Month.
Good man. Have a good day. Have a good evening.
Too. Peace and blessings. Sir. One God, one aim, one destiny.
Amen. I like that. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you so much for joining this evening as well. And let me just give you an applause right there for the show. And I had Minister on tonight, and I think it was very important. What you got to say, and the Honorable Minister Mwariama de Kamau, born and raised in Washington D.C. introduced to the UNIA ACL in 1997. He became second vice president of division number 330, co-founded Marcus Garvey and Amy Garvey Work Study Group, president of the Washington division. August 2024, Kamau was elected Honorable Mwariama Kamau, President General of Universal Negro Improvement Association, founded the Henrietta Vinton Davis Foundation and the Universal Marcus Garvey Day Tribute. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining, and I'm just going to be just stay a bit over on TikTok for a moment, and this discussion will be on podcast. It should be on Spotify. I'll upload just the discussion. Likewise, going to have Minister Malik and Brother Stephen Golden as well. So these can be used as a tool. But as I said before, the sayings and the teachings of Marcus Garvey is out there in society. We must have a government of our own, a government that will protect our interests. You know, the pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier than them both put together. When all else fails to organize, conditions will. Progress is the attraction that moves humanity. And I'm just quoting some Marcus Garvey saying, liberate the minds of men, and ultimately you will liberate the bodies of men. Chance has never satisfied the hope of a suffering people. The man who is not able to develop and use his mind is bound to be the slave of the other man who uses his mind. We must have a religion of our own, a religion that will give us a sense of pride and dignity. We're entitled to our own opinions and not obligated to or bound by the opinions of others. Ladies and gentlemen, please like and subscribe, and with the discussion, with the show, and all the best. And I'll be over on TikTok. All right. Thank you very much. Peace out, and God bless you, and see you around next time as well. Well, guys on TikTok, well,